Okay, this is going to be a quick review and retrospective of John Carpenter's Escape from New York. One of my all-time favorites.
I know, we're doing like a whole John Carpenter thing on the show, it seems like.
Yeah, well,
all the movies that we're going to do are like John Carpenter. Not all of them, but, a lot of them.
We got to get John Carpenter out of the way, because John Carpenter was a masters of the 80s flick.
Oh, yeah.
They were like flicks. Some of them were films. I could probably consider
The Thing was a film. Probably Halloween was a film.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call that a flick or not.
Escape from New York was a film, too. Now, They Live was a flick. It was a good flick, but...
We're going to do They Live on here eventually, too. But seriously, but Tom has been purchasing all of the limited edition, Steelbook Blu-rays of John Carpenter's films. Not all of them, but just the ones we like the best.
Yeah, it's from a company called Shout Factory. So I want to review these Blu-rays as they come up. I would think this is probably the definitive version of Escape from New York. A lot of you guys who are listening to this review have already seen this flick, so I'm just going to kind of focus on, for right now, the Steelbook Blu-ray version of it. It's limited to 10,000 copies, and it looks really cool. It opens up like a steel book, just like it claims, and it's kind of like a tin can with really cool artwork.
The artwork is very nice.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's executed really well. It's not the original cover art for this movie. It's a reboot art, but it looks really good. What do you think of it as a graphic designer, Jenny?
I think it's really beautiful. I really like the color scheme of it. It's kind of like a cool green color scheme, and they kind of have the Duke of New York there, like Isaac Hayes, like in the back with his earring and stuff like that. Yeah,
they're showing the final scene of the movie where Snake's trying to get up over the wall, and the president's
shooting down at the Duke of New York. And it's got the Statue of Liberty really big in the background.
Right, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
It's got lots of extras. It's got 2 CDs in it. Actually, well, not CDs, but there are 2 DVDs in it. And one of the DVDs is nothing but just extras, and it includes photographs of like foreign poster art for the movie. Period, from the time. It even has photos of the original Escape from New York board game from back in the day.
Which I can't believe they made that.
Yeah, they did. And it's evidently worth a lot of money if you can find it.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I don't even remember seeing it in the stores back then.
You had to get you had to get the president, and you had to get the tape. That was what you...
Oh, right. Okay. And I love the tape in the whole movie, because I'm sure, probably a lot of you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, you probably should. Yeah. But the whole, it's kind of like a sci-fi dystopia type of movie, where the premise of it's supposedly set in the future of 1997.
Yeah, back when 1996 was the future.
Yeah. So when the entire island of Manhattan has become a prison, and if you get convicted of shit, they just throw you in there and just let you run around and everything.
The movie starts off with kind of like a brief explanation of what has happened to New York and the United States. The screenplay and the idea for this movie actually, they started working on it in 1973. And so it was in development hell for a long time. And they finally released the movie in 1981. It claims in the setup that in 1991 the crime rate got so bad, I think it went up like 5,000%.
I think it was 400%. I think it was 400%.
And then, 1994, they roped off New York and turned it into a
you remember when they did that in 1994? Yeah. I totally remember that.
Right. And then the movie's taking place in 1997. So this is kind of like a parallel universe past. That's when this is happening from our point of view now when we watch it. Right. But the movie still holds up. It's still pretty cool. It looks like a cross between 1980 and, it looks like 1980 and 1994 kind of mixed together. Wouldn't you say in certain ways?
Sort of like that. But, the cool thing about it now, I don't know if you guys know now, here's one of the coolest things I think that about getting this set, the Blu-ray set, is that there's all these really cool documentaries and stuff like that. And I am like a sucker for behind-the-scenes documentaries. And I particularly loved movies that were made in the 70s and 80s when they used practical effects, because they didn't have much of a budget, so they had to think of all these creative ways to do the shit because they couldn't afford, they didn't have CGI and they couldn't afford like real big budget effects and stuff. So some of the effects in this are really ingenious.
Yeah, especially for what they paid for them.
Yeah.
Everything's miniatures.
Pretty much.
And matte paintings.
Yeah, and you would never know. You'd never know.
Right. And the opening scene shows the president's jet, Air Force One, flying through the air, and you're kind of following next to it, and the clouds are going by. And that was a miniature. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of cotton pulled into the shape of clouds. Yeah. Laid out on screens at different levels.
Yeah.
So there was clouds above and below.
They showed it like on the documentary, and I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like a real shot, but you don't know how they did it. It looks like a good shot.
Didn't James Cameron do that? Because
I think he did.
Big, huge star James Cameron, he used to be a special effects guy back in the day, and he worked on some John Carpenter movies back in those days. And I think he did the cotton plane thing.
Right. Well, what happens is how the movie starts is, after a brief explanation of what's happening in this universe about New York being a prison. It shows Air Force One, and it's been hijacked by basically like a Marxist terrorist. And she was a female, too, which was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
She had slit the pilot's throat of Air Force One, and she's, saying that we're doing this in the name of the people or whatever. And she crashes the plane right into a building in New York. And New York's a prison. But the president actually survives the crash. They put him in like a little crash capsule.
Yeah, like a little red egg.
Yeah, and he survives it. The guy who is like the main warden over the prison, his name's Falk, right? Hawk, that's what his name is.
Hawk or Hauk.
Yeah, Hawk, yeah.
I'm not sure how they pronounce it.
He goes in there to try to rescue the president, but they already have custody of him and they're holding him hostage, and he has to pull back. So he goes back to his headquarters. And just so happens a new prisoner is in processing into the New York prison. And it's a character by the name of Snake Plissken.
The famous
Snake Plissken. And he's a war hero and veteran of the Siberian Wars of the 1990s. And he's being sent into New York for a life sentence for bank robbery. Now, in this edition of the DVD that I have, in the Steelbook edition, they actually show the deleted scene of the robbery. And it was cut from the movie for various reasons. I kind of agree with their decision to cut it from the movie, but it's good to see it.
Well, their reasoning for deleting the scene, because as it is now, the theatrical version of the movie basically just has, they introduce Snake Plissken when he's coming into the prison.
Right.
And I think they announced that he was in there for bank robbery or whatever, and he was going for a life sentence. Now, used to be, the original cut of the film had the first scene, was actually quite a long scene. Yeah. Wasn't it like 12 minutes or something like that? And it showed the bank robbery with Snake Plissken and his buddy.
His name is Taylor. They were they served together in those Siberian Wars. Taylor's a guy with a limp.
Yeah.
And evidently he had helped Snake during the war, and Snake was going to pay him back by cutting him into this bank robbery.
Yeah. The Federal Reserve. They robbed the Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah, and they didn't really steal cash. They stole...
It was like credit cards.
ATM cards. It looked like...
like a big bank of...
Yeah, like prepaid ATM cards.
Yeah, it was something like that.
And Snake needed Taylor because there was some computer hacking involved. Remember, they were hacking the train, too.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was all kind of futuristic for 1981. These concepts of prepaid ATM cards and computer-controlled trains in a what they call it, the transcontinental subway.
Yeah, it was supposedly a subway that went underneath pretty much the entire country, from every city to every other major city, which actually would be nice. They should really do that.
And make a long story short, they get away in the transcontinental subway, but the cops catch them and they kill Taylor. But really, I kind of think it's best if you don't know anything about Snake Plissken when you first see him in the movie. That I believe.
Well, John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, as you affectionately call him.
Crussell. The Crussell.
Just to save time.
It saves time, and you got the Kurt. I called him the Kurt for a while.
Yeah.
But then I also called him the Russell. And then I just said, no, he's the Crussell.
Yeah.
It was kind of like my spin on the Hest, which is Charlton Heston, and
the
Shat, which is
William Shatner, obviously.
So you got the Crussell.
Yeah.
The Crussell.
So John Carpenter and Crussell have said that the reason that they cut this whole bank robbery scene out was because they didn't really say, well, we don't want you to sympathize with Snake Plissken, but they wanted him to be a more mysterious or an anti-hero type character. Yeah. They didn't want him too humanized at the beginning. They didn't want him too sympathetic at the beginning.
Right.
Just so you weren't really sure. Like, I'm not really sure, because I guess it's better if you're not...
if you don't know anything.
Yeah, because you don't know if he's going to break bad. You don't know if he's going to, end up siding with the criminals in New York or what.
I remember, having never seen that cut scene, you don't really know much about Snake when he shows up.
Yeah, they don't give much backstory.
I was imagining the robbery as kind of a violent robbery. Maybe some people were shot and killed in it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they shot some people to get this money. But when you actually see the robbery, it was kind of a non-violent robbery. It was
just like a sneaky robbery.
It was like a sneaky robbery. They hacked some those high security boxes. What do you call them?
Yeah, I don't know what they are.
You know what I'm talking about. Safe deposit boxes.
Yeah, there you go.
Looks like they hacked a safe deposit box with a gym bag full of these prepaid ATM cards and got out of there. And there was there was a robot in the bag too. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, telling everybody to get out because it was closing.
Yes, it was closing time. Yeah. So it wasn't the violent armed robbery that I thought it was, having never seen the opening scene.
Yeah. Cut. Well, now the interesting thing about Kurt Russell in this movie, and I really like Kurt Russell in this movie. He is just like so stoic, and he's really...
He's definitely in his prime in this movie.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
He's about 30, 31
And
maybe.
honestly, did John Carpenter, I think he said that he wouldn't do this movie...
Without him.
Without Kurt Russell. Because at this stage, I mean, I know it's hard to imagine now, because Kurt Russell has been in so many action movies and stuff like that subsequently. But before that, I mean, when Kurt Russell was really young, he was in mostly Disney comedies.
Yeah, he had just got done.
He was known
Elvis.
as like
He got done doing Elvis the Carpenter did Elvis also.
Yeah, it was like it was a TV movie. It was a TV movie. Yeah, and Kurt Russell played Elvis, and he thought he was great.
Right.
So he's like, "Well, I'm going to do this Escape from New York," and Kurt Russell has to be in it because I think the studio wanted.
The studio said no. They wanted Charles Bronson
or Tommy Lee Jones, right?
Or I think they said it was
or something like that. But he thought they would be too old and.
And without this movie, the Russell would have never been able to do Stargate. We never would have been able to do Soldier, and some of the other. I don't think he would ever shown up in a Tarantino flick.
Yeah, because this was kind of one of his
Which
his
first
action.
You people don't know. I went to school with Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, he told me the story before.
Between like kindergarten and 7th grade.
Yeah,
I know the Tarantino.
He doesn't have like a Tarantino. You can't really shorten that, can you?
No,
the Tino.
The Tear.
The Tear.
I remember back when the teacher was pulling him out of the damn dirt, going, "Quentin, get out of there." It's a long story. He played tetherball with the girls. Never mind. Let's go.
You can tell that story in full.
Dominguez Elementary School.
When we do a Quentin Tarantino movie, which we probably will at some point.
All right.
But yeah, so the coolest thing about Kurt Russell, this is my very favorite scene, is when he's first brought in. Houck is played by Lee Van Cleef, who's awesome. And I love his voice, and he's just like such a great character in this. Yeah. Now I love when Lee Van Cleef brings Kurt Russell into the office to like give him the deal. He's like, "We'll give you a pardon if you go into New York and find the president. You only have 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
To find him and bring him back out and stuff like that." And Lee Van Cleef goes. Now, does he say the president's been...
President's plane has gone down in New York prison. He goes, "President of what?"
That kills
He goes, "All right, mister."
Every time. Kurt Russell's going, what? "President of what?" Like, just all really sarcastic. That's my favorite line of the whole movie. That's my
"President of what?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, you think it's funny, but he's there."
It is funny. He's right.
It was pretty cool. And another thing about this, okay, not only did this role make the Russell made this role.
Yeah.
Really,
it wouldn't have been the same without him.
Carpenter told him to develop this character. So
it was a very collaborative process.
Yeah, that's what I liked about Carpenter. Carpenter's early films, at least, it was kind of like it was done between friends. It was like it's almost kind of like a scene films. And they were independent films, but they had unions and studios involved. But really, when you look at them, they felt a lot like independent films.
Yeah.
But the Russell invented Snake Plissken. The hair, the eye patch,
that stomach tattoo.
The stomach tattoo. The motorcycle boots with the arrowhead stuck in the field point arrowhead stuck in the tips. Even the winter camouflage. That's all Russell's invention.
Yeah.
And because Lee Van Cleef was playing in it, Russell was impressed with Lee Van Cleef.
How can you not be?
And Van Cleef was, of course, from the Westerns.
Yeah.
He was an old school Western actor.
Yeah.
So Russell says, "Fuck it. Okay, I'm going to play Snake Plissken as Clint Eastwood."
Yeah.
So if you really look at Snake Plissken, his voice and everything, it's Eastwood.
The voice and the mannerisms are very Clint Eastwood-esque.
It worked, though.
It did, yeah.
And it really didn't click until the Russell said that in his interviews. He goes, "Actually, I'm just doing Eastwood." I go, "Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you are." We got to do an Eastwood flick. If I'm going to do an Eastwood flick, it's got to be High Plains Drifter, because that's a paranormal movie.
It is, yeah.
It was a drifter from a higher
that's
plane.
my favorite Western.
Yeah. And a lot of people didn't, and I didn't, I saw
I'm not a huge Western fan, but I really do like it.
I saw it several times before I realized that was the ghost of the dead sheriff come back to take the town to hell for cowardice.
Yeah.
He was a drifter from a higher plane.
Yeah.
That's what they were talking about.
See? Mind blown.
Yeah. And then at the end, he walks off into the distance, and he gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and vanishes.
And then vanishes.
Vanishes into the headstone of the dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, they got me. I didn't notice that.
It's funny, when I saw it when I was a kid, but then like when I saw it when I was older, I'm like, oh, obviously.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, I didn't get it.
Well, you wouldn't get it when you were a kid.
Didn't get it, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious when you're a grown-up when you're watching it.
Although I brought that up to my stepdad after I figured it out. I says, hey, Bill, did you know that that's about a ghost? He goes, no, it's not about a ghost.
It is, though.
And then I showed him the scenes. He was like, oh, yeah.
It is about a ghost.
Because that's what that meant.
Yeah,
yeah, okay. All right.
Anyway.
Cool. Yeah, back to Escape from New York.
All right, so...
And before I forget, one of the good things about Escape from New York that I always got to bring up is this was a cheap movie. I think it was only $5, maybe $6 million budget.
Yeah.
Today, if you were to try to do that movie, it would probably be $100 million, probably.
Well, yeah. But here's the rad thing. Okay. Now,
how they did it is they just edited a bunch of locations
and
together.
You never know. Like, I love this. It kills me. Like I said, I love behind-the-scenes documentaries. Not nowadays, because now it's like, oh, we made it in a computer, so it's a bunch of nerds sitting in front of a computer making shit in CGI. Big deal. Like, or a bunch of actors standing in front of green screen. Yeah. That's no fun to watch. It's fun to watch shit from the 70s and 80s when they're like, well, we had to make stuff with gaffer tape, and we didn't know how to... Because, like, okay, this is the most impressive thing to me. One... They couldn't get permits to film in New York City, obviously, because it was supposed to be in New York. It was supposed to be all burned out. It was supposed to be empty and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's basically a post-apocalyptic New York.
It's post-apocalyptic New York that's been taken over by criminals, right? So they couldn't film it in New York, obviously, because it was full of people. However, their location scout found a huge area of St. Louis, Missouri.
Burned out.
That had been burned out. Like, there was a huge fire, and a bunch of the buildings had been abandoned and stuff like that, and they hadn't really bothered to rebuild it.
Yeah, it was very dangerous down there, but that's where they were going to film it.
And it
looks great on film.
So they just had, like, their art department or whatever come in and, like, redress the set to kind of look more like New York and stuff like that. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they're not sets. They're on location.
Yeah, that is an actual city, and that's,
And all the furnishings in those buildings, those are the real furnishings. Yeah. Some of the locations, they roughed them up. They spray painted the insides of it.
Yeah, obviously.
But when they're showing burned out St. Louis, they're portraying it as New York, but it just looks fantastic.
Yeah, you wouldn't really think about that.
You got the Crustle with his suppressed MAC-10 blowing holes through walls and jumping through walls and busting out glass and running away from, I guess, cannibals. Guys that came out from underneath the sewers. Remember that?
Yeah.
The scene they grabbed.
I guess they were kind of cannibals.
I think the woman said that they were running out of food. It was the end of the month. They were running out of food. So they came up out of the.
Yeah, that was kind of a subtle implication.
Yeah, and they grabbed her and pulled her down into the
floor, and then you never see her again.
So I was assuming that they just ate people.
Oh, but before I get the other awesome thing about the special effects. Okay, you know how the early shots where they're doing like the computer simulation of like going into New York and stuff like that? Yeah, tell them how they did
that. That was awesome.
Okay, well, it looks like wireframe, like computer animation, stuff like that, which was... One, it was kind of available in the 80s, but it was too expensive, really, to put in a movie.
Basically, you only saw that, it's like vector scope is what it looked like.
Right,
like you see with Asteroids and Asteroids Deluxe
Which
and Tempest.
every time I had seen that movie, even when I saw it back in the 80s...
It looks like computer graphics.
I assumed it was computer graphics. It is not. Do you know what they did? They made... a miniature.
Yeah.
They had a miniature of New York City that they built out of like cardboard and shit like that.
Shoeboxes and stuff, yeah.
And they put white tape, like glowing tape, all around all the buildings so that was all you could see.
Yeah, and it looked like...
And it looked like vector CGI.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was.
I had no idea that was how they did that. It was done with fucking glowing tape.
Yeah, all of the computer graphics that were used in the movie were actually just some kind of tricks like that, photographic tricks and animations. But it works. It looks really good, especially on Blu-ray.
Yeah,
there are no computer graphics in it.
No.
No.
And I found that amazing because it never, especially that vector graphic thing, that blew my mind because I always just thought that was.
Yeah, and it was
computer generated.
Carpenter and his team, they just did a really good job. You know what I mean? They made a really big immersive world out of just different locations just sewn together.
Yeah.
Edited together. It looks really good.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were we? Okay, the plane goes down. Then he meets Hawk, and Hawk makes a deal with him. to go in and go get the president.
Yeah. Okay, although I love this too. He's like, okay, well, we'll give you a full pardon if you go in there and you can bring the president out in 24 hours. Right. And Kurt Russell is kind of like, yeah, whatever, give me a plan, I'm just going to escape or whatever. Now, what Houck doesn't tell him, like, he does this right before he's going to drop him off and right before he's going to go into New York. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to put this shit in your neck.
Yeah, he's explosives. He's injected explosives.
That if you don't come back in 24 hours, it's going to blow your head off.
Yeah. I've always wondered whether or not that was a trick.
I wonder that too.
Because how did they come up with that in such short notice?
Yeah.
Explosive capsules that could be injected into your neck.
And here's the thing too, and I noticed this the last time I watched, because I've seen it many times, but we watched it recently, preparation for this. When he puts it in his neck, I'm pretty sure he says, you have to be back here by like 15 minutes before the 24 hours is up.
I don't remember that.
Now, I think he said something like that. There was something about 15 minutes, like before, you know what I mean? So then, but then at the end, when he's getting out of New York and they're coming to rescue him and stuff like that.
He's only like 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's like 5 seconds, like right down to the wire, obviously.
Right. And he doesn't blow up.
No, he doesn't blow up. And the guy runs over and says, oh, I got to give you the antidote.
I think it might have, yeah, they were going to kill it. They were going to neutralize it with X-rays.
Magnets or X-rays or something.
Yeah. But I think the whole thing was a trick.
It might have been, to keep him from running away. Right. Because they had to give him a glider because they said, well, you can't just go into New York because everyone will see you and all this other stuff, and they didn't want him to be seen. So they gave him a glider and they said, you have to land on top of the World Trade Center and then take the elevator all the way down so no one will see you come into the city.
We probably have to back up. Hawk offers him a deal to rescue the president, all right, in exchange for a pardon. He takes that deal. So I really liked the part. They took him into a room and they laid his equipment out. They were going to issue him a bunch of equipment. It was a MAC-10 with a suppressor, scope on it, 3 magazines full of ammunition, stainless Smith & Wesson revolver with a scope on it, some ninja throwing stars.
Because, everyone needs those.
A tracker that he could wear on his hand, a big old timer.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Counting down.
Yeah. And a walkie-talkie.
Yeah. Well, he had that thing. He had that thing that was supposed to tell him where the president was, too, like that was supposed to be monitoring his heart rate or something. Yeah,
it was like a tracker that he had on his hand.
Yeah.
That was another one. It would show him the direction and distance.
Yeah.
And it just had black or red LEDs on it. It really didn't explain how it worked.
It's whatever technology.
Right. And to get in there, the only way to get in there was they put him in a jet glider. Remember? He was the only guy that was rated to pilot this jet glider, too. Yeah. That was one of the reasons why they put him on this mission. And I don't know why the police force has a jet glider like this, a special operations jet glider laying around, but they did. And it was a really good scene when he lands on the top of the Empire State Building.
It was the World Trade Center. It wasn't the Empire
yes, that's right. World Trade Center. Yeah, you couldn't really land on top of the Empire State Building, do you?
No, it's pointy.
Yeah, it's one of the World Trade Centers. And he gets down on an elevator. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the whole story. And I want to encourage people that have seen the movie before to go ahead and see it again, because shit,
Even though we spoil pretty much every other movie out here.
If you've never seen it, man, go see it. It's pretty cool. They probably have it on Instant Watch on YouTube. And if you like it, I really recommend the Steelbook Blu-ray. It looks beautiful.
It really does look very nice.
You said it was lit just like a Giallo movie.
Well, yeah, and like I said, John Carpenter... I really like John Carpenter. He's made some shitty movies, okay? Well, not shitty, but questionable, right?
Some of them.
He's made some questionable movies. But a lot of his movies are really, really good. And I really do feel like he's very inspired by Dario Argento and other Giallo-type movies, because the lighting scheme is pretty... In Escape from New York, there was some stuff in Prince of Darkness, too, that reminded me very much of a Giallo movie, Dario Argento. Just the kind of primary color, the weird lights and the lurid kind of colors and stuff like that. So I think there is like a lot of... And I noticed it in Escape from New York, like all those green shafts of light coming down through the streets and everything like that. That is very...
Yeah, it was kind of like he was moving from one world into another. Like when he was in the police stations and things like that, when they showed the deleted scene of the robbery, it looked very clean and industrial.
It's very white, very sterile.
Right. It goes from that into almost kind of like, once they get into the prison, it's almost kind of like you said, like a Giallo horror movie. It's a lot of reds, red lights, green lights, blue lights lighting up the streets. It's pretty neat.
And when he goes to, and a lot of the buildings are like kind of old fashioned looking. Yeah. Like when he goes to see Brain,
Yeah.
Who was an old friend of his, and he's kind of like the Duke of New York's guy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he goes to see him, and doesn't he lives in a library, right? Him and his girlfriend, who's played by Adrienne
it's funny.
Barbeau.
They mixed like 2 or 3 different locations together. The front of it, I think they said it was either a library or a
some kind of courthouse.
It was
a
temple. It was
a
Masonic temple.
Masonic temple.
That's what it looked like from the outside. But when he goes inside, it was actually USC.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a library at USC, and then it was they had.
It's just like Brain's lair. It kind of looks like an old school library, like all the old school.
When you say Brain, they probably don't know what you're talking about. There's a lot of really cool characters once they get into the prison. You got a guy named Cabby who's played by Ernest Borgnine. It's almost an all-star cast. Really.
Yeah, and Cabby is he's like the comic relief.
Yeah, he's a good guy. When they introduce him, they introduce him in a way that you know that this is a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's singing along, he's watching the show.
Yeah, he's super lovable in this movie. Yeah. And I say comic relief not in a stupid zany kind of way, but he just kind of provides a little
It's kind of like he's kind of like he's also kind of acts as kind of like the everyman too. I think some of the audience is supposed to kind of.
And the weird thing, and I think I asked you about this when we were watching it last time. I was like, well, why is Cabby in prison? What is he in prison for?
Yeah, it's
now
weird.
I don't know if he is in prison for something specifically, or if he just stayed in New York after it got closed in as a prison just because he liked it there.
Yeah, because it's a weird thing. By the timeline given in the beginning of the movie, the prison is really only 4 years old, maybe
something
6 years
like
old.
That. Yeah,
right?
Maybe 6 years old maximum.
Cabby said he'd been driving that exact same taxi cab on the exact same streets for 33 years. So what did he do? Did he stay in Manhattan
That
Island
was what I
as it became
assumed.
a prison?
Yeah.
But the thing is that he did say, "Can you take me with you, Snake?" He did want out. So I don't know. Maybe he was convicted of a crime, went back, found his old taxi cab, and revived it.
Be. So I don't know. I was just kind of. He seemed like the kind of person who would just stay there because he liked it.
And then later on, after you meet that character, you meet 2 other characters: Brain and his girlfriend Maggie. Brain is kind of like the local scientist that makes all the gasoline. So
he makes gasoline, so he's very valuable.
Right, so they can get electric power for
for the generators and stuff.
For certain generators, and they can drive cars. But only the leaders of New York, like the upper crust of New York, can do that.
Yeah.
And mostly we're talking about
the Duke of New York.
The Duke of New York.
Played by Isaac Hayes.
It's Isaac Hayes.
In the most pimpin' automobile ever.
Yeah, it's got chandeliers.
It's got chandeliers mounted on the hood.
And Isaac Hayes does a really good job. A guy has the deepest voice ever.
He does have an awesome voice.
I know. I mean, it's almost as deep as... Well, I think it's even deeper than James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
Imagine if Darth Vader actually was being played by Isaac Hayes. Imagine if Isaac Hayes was cast as Darth Vader. That'd be something else, huh?
I would like that, actually. I think
Where are them plans at?
Oh, my God.
Damn, the force is strong with this one. Wow, wait.
And then when he was questioning Leia, he'd have been like, "Don't make me slap a hoe."
Yeah, make me slap a hoe.
Oh, Isaac Hayes.
Yeah, but it's an all-star cast.
I also want to give a shout out to Donald Pleasance, who plays the president. The awesome thing about Donald Pleasance is that even though he usually plays kind of serious roles, didn't he play Blofeld in some of the some of the James Bond movies, and he plays Dr. Loomis in all the Halloween movies and stuff like that. But he's actually, according to everyone who knew him, a super funny guy.
Yeah, he's a riot. A lot of the crazy tortures that they
all the crazy stuff that the Duke of New York and all his minions do to the president in Escape of New York, putting the girl's wig on him and tying him to the wall and shooting him and making him say, "You're a Duke of New York, number 1," and all this other stuff. That was Donald Pleasance's idea.
Yeah, one of the cool things about Carpenter, Carpenter let his actors improve their own roles and tweak their own characters.
Well, I said, he always seemed like a cool guy to me. He always seemed real laid back and real kind of well, it's a collaborative process. He's not super bossy or anything like that.
Yeah, and his wife's in it. She plays Maggie. Her name's Adrienne Barbeau.
Yeah.
She's in it. And both of her boobs are in it.
So it's all 3 of them right here. All three of them are in the movie.
And the Crussells' first wife is in it too. She was the girl who, in Chock full of Nuts, that got pulled through the floor by the
Oh, that's
scavengers.
right. I forgot all about that.
What was her name again?
She was, I don't even remember, but she was only in it for 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes.
she like asked him for a cigarette, right? And then she just like...
Yeah, and then she got pulled, and she's taking with you, Snake, and all that kind of stuff. And the Snake's like, I ain't got shit to do, basically, you know?
Another thing I like about this movie...
I don't have much time, you know?
Another thing I like about this movie, too, and I like that they don't explain this, is that when he gets into New York and starts interacting like with all the criminals and stuff like that, and every time he says what his name is, or every time somebody says, hey, this is Snake Plissken, every single person says, I thought you were dead.
Yeah,
so he's like famous, but they don't really...
Snake Plissken. Thought you were dead.
Yeah.
Like I thought.
That's like a running gag.
Right,
like, in the movie.
Well, I think it's because of the deleted scene. When Taylor got shot, I think what happened was that word out on the street was Snake Plissken got shot, but no, it was Snake Plissken's friend, army friend. Yeah. Taylor got shot. Yeah. So I think that's who they thought was dead. Okay. They just heard about a robbery and Snake Plissken was in it and somebody got shot, so it must have been Snake.
So it must have been him, yeah. I guess in another way, that's another plus for him, like taking that bank robbery scene out, because I kind of like...
Not knowing what they're talking about.
Yeah, them not explaining it. It's like everybody knows who he is and they don't really tell you why everybody knows.
Well, that would have been big news.
Yeah.
So,
but robbing the Federal Reserve would have been big news.
Would have been big news. So every criminal would have gone, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Snake did that? I thought he was dead. You know, that kind of stuff.
And yet here he is.
Now, there was a sequel to Escape from New York.
Let's not.
Yeah, called Escape from L.A. All right. And it's nowhere near as good as the original. But that's not on Crussell. Crussell really, his work in that movie, he nailed it. He brought Snake back. It was good. But what was wrong with Escape from L.A. was that they basically just rebooted Escape from New York.
It was the same plot.
It was the same plot line, but it was almost a parody of Escape from New York. Yeah. I still want to get that on Blu-ray just to have it for my collection. I like just to see Crussell
doing
Snake,
things.
You know, doing snakely things. You know? You know, and there was a lot going on in that movie, but the CG didn't really hold up over time. I think Escape from New York is kind of proof that sometimes less is more.
Well, yeah. Really, I saw Escape from LA one time, and the only indelible image I have of that is Crussell with the bad surfing green screen.
Yeah, and he was shooting, I think, while he was surfing at the same time, I think. I think
you're right.
It was pretty ridiculous. Yeah, it was an acid trip.
And not ridiculous in a good way. Yeah, now the reason that it's taken us so long to do this review, because this was going to be our next review, but we've been like waiting to do it because... We got
held up a little bit.
Well, we got held up a little bit because Tom has been wanting me to make a Snake Plissken t-shirt.
Yeah. And this thing is badass.
And it took me like forever.
Yeah, well, she came
to get around to making one.
I liked the very first design that came up, but I didn't like the snake.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
So we had to find the right snake to make this look really good.
Yeah.
And if you check your screen, you'll see what we're talking about. Yeah, so that's available for...
It's on our Zazzle store.
Yeah, that's available for any Escape from New York fans. I already got a couple buddies that want a copy.
If you go to our Zazzle store, which is zazzle.com/13o'clock, there's a Snake Plissken shirt on there. I've also updated all of our other shirts because they had Project Entertainment Network on them, so I had to go and change it to our new website. Yeah. So they've all been updated, and I added another one just that has a logo, and then it has like pictures of us inside a clock. That's
we couldn't do a straight up Escape from New York shirt, you know, of course of copywriting, but you can do a Snake Plissken shirt. You just put Plissken on there and have a picture of a snake. Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it. People know what you're talking about.
Skirting the copyright laws. Like
it is true to form though, that shirt.
Awesome. I like how it came out, if I do say so myself. So is there anything else you would like to say about Escape from New York?
Oh, that limited edition steelbook, Escape from New York.
It is very nice.
Man, it looks good.
Very nice.
That's the definitive copy.
I like the artwork on the front because it's like kind of minimalist.
Yeah. And I also have the They Live edition of the same thing. We're going to have to talk about They Live.
Yeah, we're going to have to do They Live also. Right. Yeah, because he just got that one the other day, too.
And I'm going to order The Fog.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll do that one.
See, so like sometimes, I know I like to pick on John Carpenter sometimes because of Prince of Darkness and Vampires or whatever that one he made. But honestly, probably like 85% of his movies were really good. It was just only a few that I didn't like. You know what? I even liked his Stephen King adaptation, Christine, which a lot of people don't. Yeah. But I really, really liked it. And I actually really liked, I think it was Keith Gordon in that played Arnie. I thought he was really good in that. Like, I thought he did like a good transition from like nerd to like ragey greaser type of guy.
I think Carpenter was best when he was young and hungry. In his earlier days, I think later on once some of it started to suffer. It's like he was trying to make it quickly. And,
it does. Some of his later stuff does have kind of.
And he was trying to make it a little more
rushed.
Mainstream because some of his best movie, if you ask me, was The Thing. And
easily.
And it flopped.
At the time, it did.
It took years for that movie to
I think it was very ahead of its time.
It was ahead of its time. So was Escape from New York.
Yeah.
Escape from New York was ahead of its time in the day.
Although Escape from New York was actually a pretty big hit when it came out. It made way more than its money back.
Yeah, it was successful.
And honestly, The Thing made more than its money. It made money, but not as much as they were projecting.
Yeah.
So they kind of considered it a failure because it didn't make as much.
They're still merchandising off this movie.
Yeah.
They have
iconic
They have brand new Snake Plissken action figures like G.I. Joe. I'm going to get one.
So you can have your own little Crussel.
My own little Crussel. Own little Crussel with his Mac 10.
You can sleep with him right next to you on the pillow.
No, I don't think I'll take it that far.
You don't think?
No, I don't think I'll
so there's a possibility? Okay.
Look at trying to weasel that idea in there.
Now you're never going to get out of your head now that I mentioned it.
I had a Mac 10.
You did?
Yeah.
When was that?
When was that? 1993. I was in the Army. I bought it at the pawn shop right outside the front gate in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was the 9mm version. And this was not a Cobra. It was an Ingram Mac 10. Just like the one that Crussel had. But I didn't have the suppressor on it, of course. It was semi-auto.
So you were your own Crussel?
Not really. I just saw it there, and he only wanted $250 for it. I says, yeah, I'm going to get that. I had it for a few months, and then the MPs took it away from me.
Oh.
I went out shooting it, all right, off post, and came back onto the post. I was riding my motorcycle, and I had it in a tank bag. Well, they stopped me on a random stop coming in through the main gate. They said, you carrying any firearms, anything like that? And he goes, yeah, I got a Mac 10 in that tank bag right there. And said, step away from the motorcycle. They took it out. They called their chief.
Come here, you guys. Look at this.
Like that. Because this is within arm's reach. This is considered carrying a concealed weapon. And I said, you can't shoot a Mac 10 and ride a motorcycle at the same time. You need two hands. So they go, well, we're going to take it. You're going to have to get a letter from your battalion commander before we give this thing back.
Did you get it back?
I wasn't going to go tell my battalion commander about that. He would have reduced me in rank, probably. I just let him have it. So that's how I lost the Mac 10.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all right. That was my Crussel story.
All you need is an eye patch.
All I need is an eye patch.
That's right. Okay, well, we hope you guys are enjoying these movie reviews. Sorry it's taken so long to get this one up, but like I said, I was designing.
They're not really reviews. They're more like just discussions on them.
Yeah.
But that's good. Yeah.
So we're going to try and put some more up. And like I said, we have a huge list of movies we're going to get through. I don't even know what we're going to do next, but
we'll see.
But yeah, we'll see. And if you want a Snake Plissken t-shirt that I designed, then go to Zazzle.com/13o'clock.
Yeah, go check it out.
And there's one on there.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of our 13 o'clock shirts on there too that I just updated. So go check it out. And other than that, is there anything else we need to say?
That's right.